Hey everybody, this is Sierra from the Local History and Genealogy Department at the Kenton County Public Library. Today we are going to finish up our property records research series, and we're going to look at how census records can help you with your property research and help you build on the timeline of the people who have lived in your house. So we'll get started. If you are just joining us, over the summer we have been doing a property records research series. The first in the series was a deed research class that we did in June, and then in July we talked about city directories. Both of those videos are available on our YouTube playlist, so if you want to go back in and watch those, you can do that. You just have to go to our YouTube page. Okay, so let's dig into census records. Today we're going to look at the information about a property that can be found on the census. We're mostly going to focus on the census since 1900, and that's because most of the questions about property are in the 1900 and later censuses. That's not to say that there aren't things about property in the earlier censuses, but there are more detailed questions in these later censuses. So I really want to focus on these and help you guys get started on your research. When you're reading a census document or a schedule, just make sure that you slow down. There's a lot of columns and a lot of headings, and there's a lot of different questions that are being asked throughout each census. So make sure you slow down and analyze all those columns and the information presented. Keep in mind that censuses are every 10 years. So you will have a census for 1900, 1910, 1920, 30, 40. Just remember that not every house gets picked up in every census, so that might be an issue when you go to research. And then census records are great for creating timelines. I love timelines. I talk about timelines a lot, but census timelines give you an idea of where to look every 10 years for who's in the house, or if a family has stayed in a house for a long period of time. It's also nice for showing change in addresses, and we can sometimes see that in census records. So censuses have a lot of information about property that we might be overlooking, and it might be very helpful for your research. Okay, so this is the 1910 census. A census is often referred to as a schedule. So if you see that word, that's where that comes from, is up here, the census schedule. The first heading at the top of the census tells you everything you need to know about what part of the United States the census is from. So you get information like the state, the county, the precinct. You get information on sometimes if it's a name of an institution, so like hospitals, orphanages, anything that's an institution might be in this heading up here. And that can sometimes be beneficial to your property research as well. And then it also gives you the name of the city that it's in and the ward of the city, if that's applicable. Not every census will have a ward, but it is there in case you're interested in that. For 1900, the census heading is location, and I'm going to write down here and kind of have it in plainer, easier to read text. They asked for the street and house number in this census. So unfortunately it got cut off, but the street is usually written right here, and it's usually written going from down to up here, and in this case it's green up, and you could then know that you were looking at the green up street and that this was the house number at the time. And then from there, that information can tell you, who's lived on the property, more about their genealogical information, where they're from, what their occupations are. And then another big column for the 1900 census is ownership of home. And that census asked if the home was owned or rented, and if it was owned free or mortgaged. And a lot of times you'll just see letters here. So I put this here for you guys to just kind of jot down, but O is owned, R is rented, F is free, and M is mortgaged. And you can see that they put those words into the letters into the columns here. And then this is an extra column, farmer house. You'll see the H there. That means house. F would mean farm. So keep that in mind too. So there is a lot of data being portrayed here about a property in this 1900 census. So make sure that when you're reading through your census documents, you look at all of this good information about a property. And also, write down for your timeline who was living at the house and everything of, what they did for a living. Because that's kind of stuff is what's really fun about doing a house history, is learning about the people that have lived there over time. So kind of keep that in mind. But it'll also help you if you ever go to do deeds, that you knew that, in theory, they owned this home. So that should also help you find a deed record. Okay, so let's look at 1910. So 1910 setup is very similar. You have the heading at the top, you have questions in these columns. These are often called column headings. And for this 1910 census, they asked questions called location. And you get the street name and the house number again. You can see along the side here that it is the street here, but I had to cut it off just so we could read it. But it was Greenup Street again. And then 707 Greenup. This is 709 Greenup. This is 711 Greenup. So I know the addresses from this column, and then I can see all of the people that have lived at those addresses and information about them that the census taker took during that census. Things like relationships, ages, places where they were born, where their parents were born, what language they speak, what their occupations are, their education. And then we have another good property column heading here called ownership of home. This is very similar to the 1900 census. So we can see if they owned or rented, if it was owned free or mortgaged, if it's a farm or a house. You can also look at the census here and see the O's and the R's again. We have M for mortgage, and we have H for house. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these census records. So the censuses over time are very similar, and they do ask similar questions, but sometimes questions are different. So for example, as we move into the 1920 census, we only have very limited property related questions in this census, and that is the place of abode column heading here, and we have the street name and the house number. We still have the column heading up at the top to tell us we're in like Covington, what ward we're in, so that can help you narrow down some of the property information if you're doing it backwards, and you're not sure where this property was, or where the family was living and where this property was. But this will still be nice to know the street name and the house number, and you still get all of this genealogical data about the person who's living in the property or in the house. But unfortunately in 1920 it got a lot simpler, and so we only have that one column for place of abode. Okay, so in 1930 they brought back the home data column. They asked questions again about the place of abode. So we get the street number, we get the house number, which we need that for our property. And then we once again are getting whether or not the home is owned or rented. In this one, they asked for the value of the home or the price of the rental if it's rented. So these are all owned. And so they're saying these houses are worth $7,000, $2,500, $3,500. So keep that in mind. The other thing that they do in 1930 about home data, which I find really fun, is that they ask if the family has a radio set inside their home. So in this census, these two families have radios. This family does not. So kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at this data. And then the last column there is, does this family live on a farm? And the answer is no. So if it was a farm, it would say yes, obviously. But in this case, it's a city, and they are not on a farm. So there's some good property-related tidbits in this census as well. And once again, you still get to add all of these names to your property of people who have lived in it over time, and you can learn more about them, like their occupations, where they were from, how old they are. This census also is kind of fun because it also tells you about their employment and their veteran status. So also make note of those details when you're going and creating your timeline. And in 1940, we have a couple different things. So the column heading is now location, household data, and residence April 1st, 1935. So once again, we have the line here to give you the street and the house number. And then we have the household data column. So we are going to see a home owned or rented again. So these are all being rented. Value of the home or the monthly rental if rented. So this in theory should be that they're renting for $9, $10, $8 a month in 1940. And once again, the question about whether it's a home or a farm, these are homes in the city, so they're not farms. And then another fun question that they ask in 1940 is what their residence was as of April 1st, 1935. This is kind of helpful if you're looking at a property that changes hands a lot over time, because although these guys were all in the same place, so you know that in 1935 they were all there in that property renting. This family was renting in Grant County, Kentucky. So that can give you an idea of when someone moved in and out of the property. It might not mean that somebody bought and sold it, but it can tell you if you're looking at a property that has lots of renters, that there's another family that was renting this property in 1935 potentially, because these guys were not there in 1935. They were in Grant County. So keep that in mind when you're putting together your timeline. And like I said, all the censuses still have all these wonderful names and people and their occupations and where they're from. So make sure you write that information into your timeline as well. All right, so that is my brief introduction to Census Records and how they can help you with property records. If you have any questions, you can contact us here at the library. You can call us at 859-962-4070. You can email us at history@kentlibrary.org, or you can go online to our website and look at all of our wonderful research tools at kentlibrary.org/genealogy. We are open to the public and we're here to help you. If you'd like to come into the branch and do some research, just give us a call and we can set up a one-on-one appointment for you, or just let us know that you're headed in, and we will be happy to help you with your property research or your genealogy research if you'd like to do genealogy too. So thanks for joining me, and have a good one.